All right, so we're live, and we're going to be taking a look at learning about the find command today. That is basically, as I type in which find, that is the command that we're going to see right there at, let me get my zoom correctly, user/bin/find. Now, finding things on the computer for anything is basically your ultimate tool for all of computing. Now, if you watched the previous video, if not, I'll put the card link up there. We basically downloaded some fonts, and all we did is we took our little terminal, our iTerm2 here, and we switched up our profile and we changed our text right here. And I happened to change this to the Ubuntu font. Yesterday, I think I used Deja Vu Sans, but you don't care about that. Well, basically, we downloaded a bunch of fonts. Where does this come into play with the find command? Well, the find command is absolutely awesome and powerful. We are going to be able to find anything that we want and then move things anywhere that we want. Doing this with the command line, being able to do this on the terminal as opposed to some type of application is really cool. Now, before we get started, I just want to throw this out. I am recording this live. I don't have the time to go edit a video, do a bunch of jump cuts, etc. I am providing this information because I want my boys to be able to learn what I know about computing. I've got a decade of knowledge, well, more than a decade, 2 decades, probably 3 decades. But let's go over some ground rules. So you probably aren't going to see this on too many videos, but that's okay. These are my rules if you're going to watch my videos. It is a choice. You get to choose whether you watch or not. And you're probably saying, well, forget you, dude. Yeah. Don't watch. I'm giving you free information, so appreciate it. If you've got a lot of negative stuff to say, I don't really want to hear it. I'm not going to read the comments. Number 2, that leads me to, I will get things wrong on occasionally, but I love learning. Anything that I get wrong, just address it in the comments, and then we will go on from there. You'll be helping anybody else out because if I gave wrong information, then they'll say, wait, that seems a little bit wrong, and they'll read the comments. I am here to learn too. There's no way that I can know it all. I love walking into a library and looking at all of the topics that I will have no clue about in my lifetime before I die. So help me out. If you know something or you have information, post a link in the comments. Let's help all of us out. And always feel lucky that you have the opportunity to learn. I always tell that to my boys. And again, this is for their information because I want them to be able to go watch the videos because they're in school right now and probably not learning what I'd like them to learn. All right. So the find command. What do we want to know this for? Well, yesterday in the previous video, I already put the link up there. Actually, by the way, I need to keep note of this too. We are live. That's 2:25. I'm going to keep some little notes here because I want to make sure that I put, let's do add link at 2:25 or thereabouts. We'll go back over here. Because I'm recording this live, I have to make my own notes for things. But here's what we did yesterday. We downloaded this nerd fonts from a GitHub repository. And when we look at this, we have this collection of all of these patched fonts. Now, they've got this wonderful structure where everything is in its own folder, and then everything is then in its subfolder, and then everything is in its subfolder, and it's right there. And it's identified as I drag this out according to different flavors. They've got a Windows, they've got a Mono, and they've got a Complete, and then they've got a Windows Compatible. Now, these you're going to choose if you're on a Windows platform. I simply just needed to use this Complete. Now, the issue that we have is how in the world do we find all of these individual fonts, find being the key word here, find, and how can I move them somewhere else? How can I get these to another folder or move them or copy them? So let's take a look. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to mention, if you see this and then you see this and you're like, what happened to him? I was running, I fell down and just messed my hands and stuff up. No problem. So let's go ahead and let's find all of these items. Well, that means that we're going to have to take a look at the find command. Now, one of the things that you're going to see as I'm working on the terminal is you will see me do a couple of different things. We have to remember on the terminal here, on this Mac application, we have all of the different options that are part of this application. So as we take a look at the menus here, these menus are not part of your normal terminal situation. These menus are options that are built into this software. So you're going to see, as you take a look at the keyboard, which is right over there, I'm often going to be hitting Command K, which I did right there, and that clears my console. But when you're working on a remote terminal, meaning you've SSH'd into a separate site, another server, you can't use the commands that necessarily come with your terminal. Well, you can, because I'm going to be using iterm in order to get to my terminal, but clear. So I basically just wanted to point out that there are two different ways to get rid of everything that's on screen. You can use what's built into the software, which here on the Mac is a bunch of is the Command K, and we'll have to talk about scroll back in another video, but basically your ability to scroll back. Actually, let's do this. Let's do an ls l-lhr, and let's do root. It'll be absolutely ridiculous. You can see everything that's going on my screen. I basically just told the operating system, I want you to give me a listing of all contents in the whole of the computer. Well, I'm able to scroll up on this application because of this application, because of iterm. Now, it doesn't always work that way when you're on when you're logged into a remote machine. There's a thing called your I don't know, help me out. I believe it's called the buffer. But basically, you would have to use the clear command in order to clear the screen, where you wouldn't be able to use the Command K in order to, if I did an ls lha, I wouldn't be able to use the Command K if I was remotely logged into some terminals. But wow, that's a tangent. I actually forgot to start my timer. Let me start that. I always want to keep an eye on how long I'm recording these videos for, because there's so much information to cover in the world of computing. So find. Let's use the find command. Now, first off, we're going to use which, and we're going to look at find. I'm going to do some really good videos looking at all of the different tools and knowing how to find what tools there are and what the tools do. There's a complete ton of them, and then beyond that, you can always go out and download a bunch more from the internet. More tools than you could ever think of. And knowing all of them and what all of them do, I'd challenge anyone to find somebody who knows all of the possible tools. It's just absolutely mind-blowing how many tools there are. But Unix, Linux really has a lot of power in terms of what you can do between the tools. We'll talk about piping in another video. So we want to use the find command, and we want to be able to find all of these different fonts embedded in all of these different folders. So you can see right here with Aramo, I've got bold, and hopefully I'm not blocking this right now. But I want to be able to find all of these true type fonts. So let's use the find command in order to find all of them. No big deal. The find command works like this. You're going to type in find, and let me make my text a little bit bigger for us on screen. And that's because I like to make sure that we can see everything nice and clear, because whenever I'm watching a video and they use the little small text, you can't ever see what's going on. Now, the next thing that we get on find is where do we want to find things. Now we can always specify, we can go to the folder specifically, directory where we want to find things, or we can specify a full path of where we want to find things. Typically on a lot of the commands that you will see on places like, what am I thinking, Stack Overflow, you will see people do this, find period. Now, period is always just whatever your current working directory is. The current working directory we can always get with pwd, print working directory. So right now I am in my user directory, as is indicated by users my home folder. If I wanted to search using that period, I would have to go to the folder where all of the fonts are. Now I happen to know that they are right here on my desktop, so I could get there in multiple different ways. On the Macintosh, we have a really cool feature. Whenever we're working with a terminal application on the Macintosh, it is so easy to simply just drag and drop. We've got the user interface, and we can drag and drop anything directly into the terminal, especially if it's a folder or a path. So I could go like this. I could type in find, and then I could simply drag this folder into this area, and it will fully extend out the full absolute path. The problem is this leaves me very little room in terms of being able to work here in this folder, or I mean just see what I'm typing on my command line. because I have this really long path. So if you have a folder that's embedded really, really deep, many levels down, it's a little bit hectic. So let's back that off. And instead, I'm going to use CD, and I'm going to change my directory to that folder. Now, I can do the same thing. I can drag it in here, and I'm now in that folder. And you can see that my prompt is just going to stay nice and short. So rather than having the find with this super long string of all of my embedded folders, I can now just find within this particular folder using the period, which basically means this current folder. Now, in the find command, you have a ton of options. There's no way that I could even cover all of them. In fact, let's clear the terminal, and let's just look at what we have in terms of the find command. I'm going to type man, which is short for manual, and I'm going to type in man find. So we can take a look at what is going on here. So you can see find, walk a file hierarchy. So there is tons of different options in here. And in fact, I'll probably give you this on each of my videos because I never know if somebody's going to pop into a video and just have no clue about all of the other videos that I've done where I explain these things. But let's take a few little seconds in order to understand how we read these commands. First off, we have the command itself. Then we have a grouping right here, which is a grouping of switches. Now, I've learned them as switches. I've also seen them on the internet called flags. In technology and every industry, there's always terms that you use, and some people use some terms, some use others. Some people are very specific about those terms. Some people are okay saying what they are, what they aren't. In the realm of Unix, Linux, I don't know which one is actually correct. Leave it in the comments. Is it a switch? Is it a flag? If you're a long-time Unix, Linux user, great, you know. I just know how to use them. So this first grouping right here reads as this: find with a -h, or typically in most programming, the pipe or double pipes will mean or as opposed to and. So -h or -l or -p, you're going to supply that. Now you don't necessarily have to supply those particular options. And again, this video needs to be so much shorter that we are definitely not going to read through the whole manual. I am here to provide information so that you get inspired to go read, look up more examples, and see all of the cool stuff you can do. We will get to a cool little thing where we are going to move all of this content based on what I know about the find command. We've got fpath, but here, notice that this particular area or this particular part of this whole string or this whole command does not necessarily have these brackets. These brackets tend to mean that it's optional, I believe, but whereas this means that you absolutely need a path. So what's interesting is you look at the find that I started to type, and I was typing find and then the path, meaning I didn't have to have all of the rest of these confusing commands. I just had to have what was absolutely necessary, which in this case is this one little piece without the wrapping brackets. So then you have an expression right here. Now the expression in this particular command can be super simple or super complex. Now because I know that you want to get into understanding what we can do really quickly, let's go back. So I'll get out of the find and we'll now take a look at using the find. Let's clear this. We'll type in find. Our path is our dot. And we now want to find a particular thing. Now we're going to have to go and read the documentation in order to know what we can find, but everything comes in the form of those flags or those switches. So let's type in one of the flags or the switches for the expression part. So this is the expression that we saw. I hope I spelled that right. If not, correct me in the comments. We want to say we can have name. Now, once we were going to say what we want, we're saying we want to find out of this file hierarchy within my current path, which I happen to know is in this Nerd Fonts folder, and I'm looking for a -name. We then get to specify what it is that we want to look for. Now, that's typically going to come in the form of a string, either single or double quotes, and we'll talk about interpretation. I believe it's interpretation. Maybe it's interpolation. I forget. But there is a difference between when you use single quotes versus double quotes and what happens with whatever's inside those quotes. We'll get to that when we talk about shell scripting, whole nother topic. But within these quotes, single or double, I believe, and somebody will put comments on there about which ones, if there is a difference, at least with relation to the find command. But if I want to type in something that I'm looking for, I could go over here and find an exact name. So I could, let's take this one right here. We'll copy this. So all I did is I hit the return there. You can see it on the keyboard. Or is it over there? Yeah, it's over there. And I could then paste this right here, and then I could put my closing quote. Now what I've told it is I've told it, please find absolutely and exactly this one specific font. Now that's because I went over to the UI and I copied the name of the font here. Well, there are things in all of computing, and this will apply pretty much everywhere, most everywhere. It won't apply in regular expressions, where the star stands for a wildcard. So this right here, the star character in most of a lot of programming, command line, wherever, and programming languages tends to mean a wildcard. The wildcard can be at the beginning or at the end of whatever you are looking for. So if we put in a wildcard and then we look at just the extension, so if we put .ttf and we click Find Now, we are going to get a much larger collection of fonts. And as we scroll up in our buffer here, notice that we've got IBM, we've got our Ubuntu, we've already done something that's pretty cool. We've been able to find all of the true type fonts, and that's the .ttf. But it turns out that as we scroll up here, we got a pretty big buffer there. Let's clear this. It turns out that I happen to know that those are not the only fonts that I would want. If I take a look at, let's close Anonymous, let's close this one, let's take a look at maybe Blex has got it. Let's actually use my option command. Nope, that's also true type. Was this one? Nope, that's also true type. I'm looking for an open type font. There we go, we've got one. So the difference between fonts is that an OTF, a .otf open type font, is just a different font file format than a true type format. We could go into the difference between PostScript, OpenType, TrueType, all of the different history of fonts. Short story is most modern day operating systems are able to read multiple different font file types. And this includes OTF and this TTF. Now I haven't done this. I do this somewhat frequently, not super infrequently in terms of using my find. By the way, did you notice right there? If you need to, rewind the video and just go look at what I did. I hit the arrow key and it basically went back to commands and it gave me the command that I used before. I didn't have to retype the command. What we are able to do is we are able to switch a couple of things up in our find command. We've got something super simple so far, but let me type and change name to .iname. Now where does that change come in? Well, that basically means that it doesn't matter now if it was capital TTF or TTF. That just basically means I want you to do a case insensitive find on the name. So in the case where this is most useful is you might have files that came from a mixture of files that came from a camera and maybe from the hard drive, where some are actually JPG and then some of them are lowercase JPG. So in that case, the -iname is going to be a little bit more helpful to you. But we are able to do an OR operation within this find. So as it stands right now, we're trying to find all TTFs and we also want to find all OTF files, and there may be some others in there as well. So now we're getting to get a little bit more complex, and I won't go as far out as finding all of the different fonts that are in this whole collection of these nerd fonts, but I do want to show you that you can find more than just one thing. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I should be able to do a -O and then again a -iname, and we'll see what happens here if we get, and we'll repeat the same pattern, but in this time we'll do an OTF, and we'll see if this comes out. Did we get any? Oh, we did get our OTF right there. So you can see that we have a mix now of our OTF fonts, our OpenType fonts, and our TrueType fonts. Now you are able to do these combinations in order to find all kinds of different files based on what it is that you're looking for. You can get pretty complex, but you have to remember that your command is going to get longer and longer and more complex. So this is why most people are scared of the command line. They're scared of these extremely long commands that basically you have to understand the language. It's just like a foreign language in order to understand what it's actually saying. This especially applies to regular expressions and doing things when you're in, I don't know, say finding things and you're doing all kinds of complex things within Vim. Vim is absolutely awesome. If you want to get a head start, go take a look at Vimcasts. Just so much cool stuff I'm going to show you with Vim as we go forward. But we're just in the operating system right now with our fundamentals. Now, what can we do with these now that we have found them? It's great that we can get a list of them. Let's see what we can do with this command. Well, with this command, let's say we wanted a list of these on our desktop. I wanted to put a file right here. It's actually going to show up right over here. I can output this content. We can see that we get a nice list of them. Let's output this to the file. Say that we want that as an example. So in order to output something within Unix, and this is where we'll get into another video for standard in, standard out, and standard error, is we can redirect our output. Now, what is a redirect? Well, in this case, redirect is just simply that right there. That is your greater than sign. Got a great little trick for greater than, less than. If you always forget, hold your hand out like this, and it's the L that is less than, and that's the less than. Of course, for you, it may be reversed. Anyway, this redirect right here, we'll get into all kinds of things like pipes and appending and all kinds of other things. But for right now, we're just going to use the one thing, a redirect, and we're going to redirect that output that goes into our terminal out to an actual file, because sometimes you want to save this file and then be able to go do things with it, maybe import it somewhere or search it for additional things. So in this case, we're going to output it somewhere. Now, in that video that I shot yesterday, I talked about the tilde. That means our desktop, or it doesn't mean our desktop, excuse me, it means our home folder. In this case, I'm going to start to type desktop. I'm going to hit my command key. That's going to expand it out. And now I just need to give it a name of the file. So let's say font names, and I'll call it a .txt file. Now, as soon as I hit the return, what we're going to see is that it should have showed up. Did it show up? There it is right there, popped up while we're actually doing this. So this is pretty cool. We were able to take those fonts and we were able to output them to a text file. We will open those up over here, and there we go. We have all of the list of at least the OpenType and the TrueType fonts here in a separate folder, or excuse me, a separate file that we're now able to do whatever we want with these. We can take a collection, of course, sort them, all kinds of stuff. Boy, we'll get into the cut command and all kinds of cool things in terms of, heck, reading this into Vim and then doing all kinds of cool things. So that's cool thing number one that you may like to do. But most of the time, what we want to do is we want to do something to these actual files. In fact, let's go open that file and let's talk about this. The find command has a very powerful function embedded within it called exec, which means I want to execute, maybe I should say exec, -exec, X, I don't know. We'll take a look when we get to the command line. We want to execute something on each of these files that we have found. Now, the fact that it's returning this full path, or excuse me, this is not a full absolute path, this is a relative path because it starts with the period, which means the current folder that I am in, I am finding this file in this embedded collection of folders, and this is the actual file. So if I wanted to do something to this file, I can do something to it using the -exec operation. Now, this was one of the first things that I learned about the find command, and it was one of the most exciting things. Reason being, I had a collection of photographs and a ton of them to move, and it was from a card, and that card had .mov files, it had .jpeg files, and .png files as well. I wanted to move only the JPEG files out of all of their embedded folders. Well, there weren't that many embedded folders, and I wanted to move them to another folder, but they were spread all over the place It wasn't a card, actually, because the DCIM card basically just has everything all in one folder. It was probably a folder that I had that I wanted to pull them all out, and they were just in multiple embedded folders, just like we have here with our fonts. So when I found this command, or when I figured out how to use this, either searching on Stack Overflow or wherever I found my education for learning this, I was just overjoyed. So let's take a look at how we would move a copy of all of these fonts. So I'm going to create a folder over here, and I'll move it right here, and we will say fonts. Now, where does this come into play? Where is the practical application that we have for this? Yesterday, the video that we watched, that I linked at the beginning of this video, and is also up there either at the end of this video or maybe at the cards again. Let's see, I'll take a look at that. 2532. I'll put another 2532. There we go, second link. We are going to basically move a copy of these fonts into this particular folder, meaning we want to leave the originals here, but we want to have a copy go into our folder right here so that we can basically select all of those fonts all at one time and move them into the fonts folder, the operating system. So let's do that. We're going to have a longer command right here, just going to bring that up with the arrow key, and we are now going to use the -exec. Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with on this video before we wrap things up, I'm already at 26 minutes. I don't want these videos to go longer than 30 minutes. It's a long time to sit, but there's a lot of information. For me to shove this into 5 or 10 minutes, you wouldn't get very much. And my goal is to have you explore, because you're thinking, this is cool stuff. This is cool how I can move these files. So we are going to use the exec command. Now the exec command means that whatever comes after this particular switch, flag, whatever you want to call it, is going to be a command that's going to be applied to each of those path items that the find command found. So I am going to use the cp command, which is short for copy, and I'm going to cp, and the next thing that we need to pass is basically this little set of brackets. It's whatever came in terms of the listing that the find found. So where it reads that dot whatever, this set of brackets represents this on a line-by-line basis. So this right here is going to be swapped into this right here. And that's where we can say for each one of these things that you find, we are going to copy this from its relative location to where. And it can be to anywhere else. So let's go CP, and then I'm going to put this on my desktop in the fonts folder. Fonts, there we go, and complete my path. Now there's one final thing that we have to have in order to make this work, and that is basically a continuation character, or I don't know what it's called specifically. I haven't taken the time to look it up. It's not a continuation character, I just made that up. But basically it is, in order to execute multiple commands within the shell, which is what we're operating in here, we have to have a slash or something that delimits when a command ends and the next one starts, because in all of the command line, the one thing that's absolutely critical are spaces. So everything between the command, you'll notice that there aren't commands in Unix or Linux where the command is multiple words. It's almost always just one word. I don't know. There's probably binary tools where it has an underscore, maybe a dash. I don't know. But the shell interprets the space as the separator for each of the arguments that the command gets. So in order for this command to have an ending and for the next command to actually be recognized, the next CP, the next copy that exec is going to pass or have find run, we need to have this backslash. Now hopefully this will work. I'm doing this live again. Remember those rules at the very beginning. I'm learning, and this is something I know how to do, know how to explain a little bit, but we'll see if it works. I did not get my right one. Let me exit out of that. Notice that I use Control-C. I remember what I forgot. Now there's either that, nope, or it is the other way around. Which one is it? Is it that one right there? There we go. Whew. Whew. Thought I forgot what I was doing. So somebody more knowledgeable than me, some Linux, Unix guru, is going to explain why we need, which one is which in terms of the ending there. In fact, this is your homework. Remember, I'm shooting these videos for my sons, and it's also for me to continue my education. Why? I know that the slash is allows for the continuation of commands or additional options in a command, and then the semicolon, you know what? It worked. I just had to have those two. Let's open up the fonts folder and look at what we accomplished. That is the result of our video. I'm actually going to go off now, and I'm going to go study. I forget. You know, you learn these things and you know how to use them. That's what's important in terms of being able to accomplish the task. But knowing the specifics of every single thing, I know how to use a hammer, but I don't know what the little claw end or the two little things are. Are they called tines because it's like a fork? And a fork has tines, but I don't know that that's what it's called on a hammer, but I still know how to use the hammer. Well, that's what I've given you right here. I've given you the knowledge to understand what you can do with the find command. So let's wrap this video up. We're right at about 30 minutes, so that's enough for this video. How do you take this knowledge and go beyond? Because what we did is we basically, within this highly embedded structure, which is going to be really awesome there, expanding all of them. You can see the scroll bar. As I can see all of these different files come up right here, I was able to find all of the open type fonts and the true type fonts with the find command and pull them all into one single folder, which makes it so easy for me to just do a Command A and just drag this into my fonts folder if I wanted all of them, which I probably wouldn't. Your practice, your exercise now is cool. Here's the problem though. Can I modify this find command to limit and only find just the complete version, or can I ignore the Windows versions? Can I ignore the Windows versions and the mono versions? So in all of computing and all of programming, it's all about finding the pattern. How do I find getting the result that I want, and how do I make that happen? Well, in this case, I sort of gave you a clue because I was going to suggest your further, what is this? Homework. That's the word I'm looking for. Your homework is, how can I find all of just the complete versions of these fonts? And the hint is, you would basically probably look at the documentation, or this is what I would do, for the find command, or go online and basically do a Google search of find command line minus excluding or omitting, or any keyword that might help you get there. Because we noticed that the pattern is, out of this collection of the format that they are storing for these nerd fonts, they are identifying them with keywords. Keywords of Windows, and keywords of mono. So if we want this specific one, then we would be able to say we want to exclude all of these fonts. So that's probably just going to be an option of a flag that we have to look at within the manual page of the find command. And inversely, if we wanted all the monos, that's really easy. We basically just extend what our find is going to look for, looking for the mono. So I'm going to let you find that out, and I will give you one little hint here as I clear my terminal. We are going to type in man, short for manual, find, and I'm going to give you a little tip before we close this out. We will be learning this in another video. Maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow. In fact, I think we will. We'll talk about less and how you can how you can move through all of the documentation that you have in a man page, because it can be quite exhaustive. In fact, if we scroll down here, the find command, yeah. Do you see how many options there are? Is there any reason or logic as to why people don't want to learn the command line? Well, there's power in the command line, and the trick is being able to know how to navigate. Look at that. I can go to the top, I can go to the bottom, I can go to the top, and then I can find anything that maybe has the word omit, pattern not found, or exclude, and maybe go for ignore. Ah, look at that right there. Well, being able to search within the manual page gives you a big advantage in terms of being able to quickly find what is the option that you are looking for. Now in this case, it doesn't look like ignore red dir race is actually going to give me what I want, but I did just throw out a hint there that you can go search the manual page for find in order to find out how you would be able to basically ignore that window option, ignore the mono option, and basically create our long command. And if we have a watcher that loves watching Linux, Unix videos and is like watching this saying, that dude doesn't know crap about what he's talking about, go ahead. If you know more than me, put the command in the comments. I'm sure tons of people would learn to love from you. Reference the Stack Overflow. It's just absolutely awesome. So I am basically shooting these once a day, just shooting the content, shooting it live, not doing the edit, no jump cuts, because I don't have time. I've got a real job. I've got to go do that right now. I don't even have a formal like intro and outro, which maybe I'll come up with those as I shoot these videos. But for right now, I think it's going to be QWERTY out. Maybe for the intro, we'll do Let's Get QWERTY. I don't know. You give your suggestions in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. See you later.